"Sir, I beg you, please don't go out today." Mr. Cyril Badian stopped dead in his tracks. He had just crossed the hallway, adjusting his watch with one hand, his car keys in the other. And there, right in front of him, kneeling on the cold tiles, was Aminata, the housekeeper. Her eyes were red, her hands clasped, her body trembling. "What is the meaning of this?" Cyril asked, taken aback. Aminata looked up at him, her voice shaking. "Please, sir, don't leave. Something terrible is going to happen if you cross that gate today." Cyril blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I had a dream last night. You were wearing exactly these clothes. You got into your car and you never came back. There was blood everywhere. People were shouting your name. Please, don't go. Please." A strange silence filled the hallway. The air grew heavy. This wasn't one of those ridiculous dreams meant to amuse. She seemed genuinely terrified. The crucial choice. But Cyril's phone vibrated in his pocket. Thomas again. He was already late for a crucial meeting with investors. Billions rested on this contract. "Get up," he said in a low voice. "This is not the time. I beg you, sir. I know I am only a maid, but I couldn't stay silent. If I let you go out and something happens to you, I will never forgive myself." Heels echoed on the staircase. Madame Miriam descended slowly, her dressing gown tied tightly around her waist, her face already made up. She paused, seeing Aminata on the floor. "What is going on here?" she asked in an icy tone. "She says I shouldn't go out," Cyril replied, not taking his eyes off Aminata. Miriam walked down 2 more steps and crossed her arms. "Why?" Aminata didn't move. "Madam, I had a very clear dream. If he leaves the house today, he will not return alive." Miriam scoffed. "This is why I always said she should be fired. Now she fancies herself a prophetess." "Miriam," Cyril interjected. No, let me speak. You have an important meeting this morning. There is money at stake, contracts to sign. And you are going to let yourself be stopped by a maid with her dream stories? Are you kidding me, I hope?" Aminata bowed her head lower. "No, I'm sorry, madam, but I had to say it. Get out of here." But Cyril raised a hand. "Wait!" Miriam stared at him, surprised. "Wait for what?" He remained silent. Something in Aminata's voice rang true. No shaking, no dramatics, just raw fear, raw truth. Suddenly, it was like a whisper deep in his chest, an unspoken, invisible warning. "If you cross that gate today, you will regret it." He turned around, walked slowly to the living room table. He placed his keys and his phone down, then sat on the sofa, eyes fixed on the floor. "I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving." Aminata let out a slight sigh, still kneeling. Miriam was dumbfounded. "Aminata, what are you doing?" "I said I'm not leaving." "But Cyril, honestly." "I said I'm not leaving." He stayed there, motionless, his gaze lost in the marble tiles. Miriam shook her head furiously and returned upstairs, grumbling. Aminata slowly got up, wiped her tears, and picked up the glass of water she had left on the table. Her hands were still trembling. Cyril remained seated, his heart pounding. The image of the kneeling young woman still haunted his mind. Why did the fear in her eyes seem more real than anything he had felt in years? He didn't know yet that all of this was only the beginning. A house of lies. Cyril Badian was not just rich, he was respected. He didn't like social media, unnecessary noise, flashy interviews, or exuberant birthdays. But in all the real estate circles from Dakar to Abidjan, his name carried weight. He was the co-founder of Crest Rock Immobilier, one of the largest real estate development groups in West Africa, with his longtime partner and best friend, Thomas Onana. They had built everything together, from their start making cold calls in a small office in Yopougon with a single computer, to multi-billion-dollar contracts in Riviera, Gulf, and Plateau. Cyril was the strategist, Thomas the charmer. Cyril was silent, precise, and observant. Thomas was flamboyant, fast, and always ready to sell a dream. People admired their friendship. They said, "They're like brothers." But Cyril had known for a long time that they were far from being the same. Nevertheless, business was booming, money was flowing, and life was good. At home, too, everything seemed perfect. A modern villa in Bingerville, a brand-new gym, scented candles in every room, and luxury shoes as if he were opening a boutique. And a wife, Miriam, beautiful, elegant, always radiant, always impeccably dressed in wedding photos, events, and anniversaries. They were the ideal couple. People said, "You are blessed, a perfect couple." But behind the drawn curtains, it was another story. Cyril had married Miriam for love, a true love. They had met in a high-end decor shop. She was buying cushions, he an armchair. "Does navy blue go with gray?" she had asked. "Perfectly," he had replied without hesitation. She had laughed, he had asked for her number, and everything had followed quickly. But the love, the real love, hadn't stayed. By their second year of marriage, everything was clear. Miriam didn't want a companion. She wanted comfort. No cooking, no cleaning, no questions, just space. And she hated maids. In less than a year, she had fired 6, always for trivial reasons. She opened the curtains too wide. She breathes loudly when cleaning. She walks like a market vendor. Each time, Cyril would come home to find a packed bag and a new replacement on the way. He had tried to protest. "I'm not running a school here," she had said coldly. "If I don't like someone, she leaves." So Cyril stopped arguing. He plunged himself into work, into money, into silence. Aminata arrives. Then, one Friday, the last maid left without warning. When he returned, his meal was cold, his clothes scattered, the living room silent. His wife was sleeping in the spa room. That evening, she announced she was leaving. "I found a new one. She arrives tomorrow." That is how Aminata entered their life. Small, discreet, hair braided in tight cornrows. She wore a simple dress, flat sandals, no jewelry, no noise. She greeted everyone with respect, then got to work. In a few hours, the living room was swept, mopped, the guest toilet cleaned, the pantry organized. She asked no questions. She touched nothing that wasn't hers. She moved like someone who wanted to be forgotten. But Cyril noticed her. Not in a bad way. He was simply intrigued. Most maids lounged, watched TV, or chatted. Not Aminata. She woke before dawn, ironed shirts like in a hotel, and cleaned the windows without being asked. Even Miriam, who never complimented anyone, had admitted one evening, "She's less annoying than the others." It was the highest praise she had ever given. Days passed. Cyril returned from work to find the house impeccable, the meal hot, the clothes folded, absolute calm in the living room. No shouting, no complaining, just peace. He looked at her once and thought, finally, someone who brings peace to this house. But what Cyril ignored was that peace was never the real reason Aminata had entered his life. The crash. Cyril was still sitting in the silent living room, his phone on the table, his keys right beside it. The air conditioning hummed softly, the only sound in the room. He should have been at the office, shaking hands, signing contracts, smiling for the cameras. But no, he was there, motionless, eyes lost, with that strange feeling in his chest, a fear he didn't yet understand, a weight in his heart. He kept seeing Aminata kneeling, tears in her eyes, begging him not to go out. At the time, it had seemed ridiculous. But now, his phone vibrated again. It was Thomas. He sighed and picked up. "Hello, my brother. What's going on?" Thomas's voice was tense. "You didn't show up. The investors are furious. We almost lost everything." "Hello." "Yes. I had to cancel," Cyril replied flatly. "Cancel what? Do you realize what was at stake today? That contract was pure gold." Yes, I know. But talk to me, Cyril. What's wrong?" Cyril hesitated. He didn't even know how to explain it. He didn't understand it himself. But before he could say a word, another call came in. The screen showed Fanta, the office secretary. He answered. "Yes, hello. Sir, your voice is shaking." "Yes, Fanta. It's Jean, your driver. He had an accident." Cyril straightened up suddenly. "What? Where?" "The third plateau bridge, sir. A truck lost control and hit your car, the Lexus you always use. It rolled over several times. Jean is at the hospital, unconscious. We thought it was you inside." Cyril slowly lowered the phone. The same car. The same route. The same time. He remained frozen, speechless. He saw Aminata kneeling again, her supplicating eyes. What if he hadn't listened? The silence in the house became deafening. Miriam walked back into the living room, still in her dressing gown, phone in hand. "So are you planning to stay here all day?" she asked sharply. Cyril didn't even look up. "There was an accident," he said. "Oh, really? Who?" "Jean took the car. A truck hit it. The car is destroyed." Miriam stopped short, her finger frozen on her phone screen. "And you think that means what?" she asked, shrugging. "So now you want to turn this into a mystical film? Accidents happen every day in Abidjan." He stared at her. She wasn't even moved. Not worried. No fear. No gratitude. It was as if his death wouldn't have bothered her. Something cracked in Cyril's chest. "I'm keeping her," he said suddenly. "Who?" Miriam asked, frowning. "The maid, Aminata. She stays. She has to go." Miriam shrieked. "She caused a panic for nothing. She has no right to tell you what to do or where to go. This is my house." "It's my house too," he replied, calm but firm. Miriam froze. The silence was brutal. Then she turned on her heel and left the room, leaving behind the smell of perfume and a glacial tension. Cyril sank onto the sofa, hands clasped. He wasn't thinking about Aminata. He was thinking about something else. Something deep. Something wrong. He didn't have proof yet, but he felt that something was terribly amiss in his life. The second warning. The tension in the house did not disappear. On the contrary, it grew heavier each day. Cyril spoke less. He observed. He observed Miriam. How she almost never looked at him except to complain. How she immediately changed the subject whenever he mentioned the accident. And especially how she avoided crossing paths with Aminata as if guilt resided in the maid's shadow. But Cyril said nothing. Not yet. Instead, he asked questions in silence, listened to the silences, and noted the looks. A few days after the accident, an unexpected event occurred. Cyril was in the dining room, reviewing reports on his tablet. Miriam had just stepped out to take a call. Aminata entered to clear the plates. She didn't speak at first. Then, in a very low voice, barely a murmur, "Sir." Cyril looked up. She bent slightly, pretending to pick up a napkin that had fallen. "Please, do not sign any documents this week." Cyril frowned. "Why?" Her voice became even quieter. "I dreamed again yesterday. It was even clearer this time. I saw you signing papers, and shortly after, everything collapsed. You lost your company. Your accounts were frozen. There were police, sir. You were handcuffed." Cyril froze in his seat. She added, still softly, "If you sign those documents, you won't just lose your money. You risk losing your freedom for a crime you didn't commit." But before he could ask more questions, Miriam returned to the room. Aminata calmly took her tray and left. But her words remained and never left Cyril's mind. The betrayal. A few days later, Thomas showed up at the house, always in his usual style. Impeccable hair, luxury perfume, broad smile. "My man!" he exclaimed, hugging him. "Honestly, thank God you weren't in that car. That was brutal." Cyril managed a small smile. Thomas looked around. "So, the maid is still here? The one who made the prophecy that morning?" "Yes," Cyril nodded. Thomas burst out laughing. "You too, huh? Since when do you listen to dreams?" "I no longer ignore warnings," Cyril replied calmly. Thomas raised an eyebrow, then changed the subject. "Anyway, the Dubai deal is still alive. All that's missing is your signature." Cyril accepted in silence. "Send the documents." "That's what I like to hear." But later, when the file arrived and Cyril opened it, his body tensed. Something was wrong. The figures didn't match. The value of the proposed land was lower than what they had agreed upon, and the foreign bank account mentioned for payment meant nothing to him. And then the phrase returned like an echo. "If you sign, you will go to prison for a crime you didn't commit." Cyril did not sign. He closed the file and locked it in his drawer. Then he began a discreet investigation. He called a friend specializing in finance. What he discovered was far worse than anticipated. Thomas had been embezzling company funds for years, large sums hidden under fake project names. Everything was carefully concealed, as if someone never intended to be caught. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a crime. The confession. Cyril was not only facing betrayal in business, things were deteriorating at home. Miriam became increasingly aggressive. She tried everything to get Aminata fired. "She's too comfortable," she said one morning, slamming a drawer. She's too silent. I don't trust her. Cyril didn't even look up. She's efficient. She's insolent. She's undisciplined. Miriam crossed her arms. She must leave. Cyril finally looked up at her. She stays. Miriam's voice rose. You are choosing a maid over your wife. I am choosing my peace. That evening, Miriam retreated to the guest room. She paced, trembling with anger, simmering. Then she grabbed her phone and dialed a number. Hello. Thomas's voice sounded tired. I can't take it anymore, Thomas, her voice broke. I'm suffocating here. What's wrong now? He's still protecting her. He refuses to fire her. She interferes with everything. She's not normal, Thomas. She's a curse. Thomas remained silent. Miriam continued. You told me to marry Cyril. You said that way we could get in. Access the company, access the accounts. We planned everything for years, and look at us now. Are we still on plan? No, she cried. We tried everything. You even sent those men that night on the Ajame Road, remember? They were armed, Thomas. They waited for him for hours. And what happened? I don't know. He changed his route again because of her. It's like... Thomas sighed. It's like she always knows every trap. He avoids it. Miriam's voice became almost a whisper. I'm tired. I hate living here. I hate pretending to be his wife. I hate sharing this bed with a man I don't love. I'm tired. Do you love me? Thomas asked softly. Yes, she replied. I did all this for you. But it's falling apart here. If nothing happens fast, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. The hotel room. Saturday evening arrived. Calm and slow. Cyril was on the balcony, reading financial reports on his tablet. Miriam entered the living room, dressed in a fitted travel dress, her scarf loosely covering her braids. She looked at her phone. Mama, I'm leaving tomorrow morning, she said. Cyril didn't look up. Where to? To Bingerville. My father is not well. I have to go see him. He nodded slowly. Okay. I should be back Monday. Very well. She waited for a word, a question, a safe trip, a gesture. But nothing. Cyril kept reading. Something in that silence made her nervous. But she smiled and walked away. Cyril didn't move, but inside, he had already made a call. Follow her discreetly. Don't approach her, don't be noticed. Send me updates. The next morning, Miriam left the house at 7 a.m. Luxury handbag, sweet smile. She kissed Cyril on the cheek and waved goodbye. At 8 a.m., the first message arrived. She did not go to Bingerville. She went directly to the Masserie Boutique Hotel, Rue Atacumbo, Adama. Name on the register, Madame T. Og. Cyril read the message without reaction. At 10 a.m., the second message arrived. Thomas arrived. Cap pulled low. Sunglasses. Simple black polo. He did not take a room. He went straight up. Same floor, same room. Cyril stared at the photo, then sat in silence. No shock, no panic. He had known the truth was knocking at his chest for weeks. This was just confirmation. He would not leave the house all day. At 6 p.m., Cyril arrived at the hotel in a black SUV. He said nothing to his driver. He descended calmly and entered. The receptionist smiled at him. He did not smile back. Room 207. I'm sorry, sir. She hesitated. Are you? He took out his wallet, placed 2 wads of new bills on the counter. I won't be long. She swallowed hard, then handed him a duplicate key. He didn't rush. He didn't knock. He opened the door, and they were there. Miriam in a white bathrobe near the minibar, a glass of wine in hand. Thomas shirtless on the sofa, scrolling through his phone. They looked up at the same time, and everything froze. The glass slipped slightly from Miriam's fingers. Thomas stood up too quickly. Cyril said nothing. He walked in, looked at them one by one. Cyril. Miriam opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Thomas attempted an awkward smile. Cyril, my brother. Cyril raised a hand. Don't talk. Thomas froze. Miriam was trembling. Her lips barely moved. Cyril, I can explain. No. Don't lie. Not here. She stared at him as if he were a stranger. You followed me. I haven't trusted you for months, and now I understand why. Thomas took a step forward. It's not what you think. It is exactly what I think, Cyril cut him off. And worse. A long silence fell over the room. Cyril turned to Miriam. You married me for this. Her eyes filled with tears. You never looked at me. You were always married to your company. And you were married to my bank account, he countered. You and your business partner. Miriam lowered her eyes, struck. Cyril looked at them one last time. I hope it was worth it. Then he turned and left. No shouting, no hitting, no noise, just the silence of a man who had finally seen everything. A final farewell. That evening, Cyril returned home and locked himself in his office. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He made 2 calls, one to his lawyer, another to the company's chartered accountant. Prepare the divorce papers and start the buyout of Thomas's share immediately. In the following days, Cyril barely ate. The house was full of furniture but empty of peace. The woman he called his wife had vanished. The friend he would have given his life for was dead in his eyes. And Aminata was still there, silent. She swept the corners, folded the sheets, served a meal he didn't touch. The day the signed divorce papers returned, Cyril didn't flinch. Miriam hadn't even come in person. She had just told her lawyer, "Tell him I accept everything. I just want my peace." Her peace. After trying to kill him, plotting with a lover, and sleeping in his bed every night while acting, she wanted peace. Cyril signed the papers without trembling, but the fire in his chest burned. That evening, he returned to the living room. Lights on, curtains open, but the house looked like a gilded coffin. He had everything and yet nothing. And that's when she walked in. "Hello, Aminata." Aminata entered the living room. She didn't knock. She didn't whisper. She walked in as light enters a dark room, gently but impossible to ignore. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she said, her voice soft but firm. Cyril looked up from the sofa, his throat tight. "Why?" he asked. She didn't look away. "My mission here is complete." Cyril stared at her. Why was she the only person he had ever known who never lied to him? The only one who saw the traps and spoke up? The only one who risked her job, her comfort, her life to warn him? "You don't have to leave," he said, and this time his voice trembled slightly. "You are the only person who hasn't hurt me." "I know," she replied softly, "but I wasn't sent to stay. I was sent to save." Cyril slowly stood up. He walked toward her, his heart heavy. He opened his mouth to speak. "I know, but no words came out." So she spoke. "If you had signed that document," she said softly, "you would have lost your company, your name, your freedom. You would be in prison right now while those who planned your downfall were kissing over breakfast." Cyril's jaw clenched. She took a deep breath. "Yes, but you didn't sign. You stayed. You listened. And that means you are ready." "Ready for what?" he asked, his voice broken. "Ready to start over. But this time, with your eyes open." They looked at each other. Then Aminata smiled. Not a goodbye smile, but a smile that said, "You will be fine." "Live well," she said, stepping back toward the door. "Trust slowly. Love cautiously. Observe everyone." She turned the handle, and, just like that, she vanished. Epilogue, a new beginning. Cyril stood there in the doorway for a long time. He did not follow her. He did not cry. But deep inside, something was breaking and healing at the same time. He returned to the living room, grabbed the frame of his wedding photo with Miriam, stared at it for a few seconds, and threw it on the floor. The glass shattered like the lie itself. He bent down, picked up a shard. He saw his own reflection, cut, hurt, but awake. And for the first time in a long time, he smiled. Not because everything was fine, but because the storm had passed, and he had survived. It took an entire year, a year of silence, rebuilding, and rebirth. Cyril dedicated himself to Crestrock. He restructured the company from within, cleaned out all the rot, and replaced everyone who had bent the knee to Thomas. He opened an office in Bingerville, hired young talent, refused bribes, and quit shady deals. He finally became the man he wished he had been sooner. And with time, the scars began to fade. He started walking again, eating with pleasure, and smiling without forcing it. When love came knocking at his door again, it wasn't loud. It was gentle, through a woman he met at a charity sale, a woman who cared neither for his name nor his bank accounts. She loved books, children, and silence. He did not rush. He made no announcements. But when he took her hand one evening under the stars, he knew that this time, it was real. And what about you? What would you have done in Cyril's place? Do you believe in dreams or intuition?